So in my first talk, I told you a little bit about the Shakespeare First Folio, what it is, and also how it came to be at Craven Museum and the person who owned it immediately before it came here. But the first folio that we have had a 300-year history before that point, which we don't know much about and is actually equally as interesting. There are at least two suggestions as to how it came to be in the Craven area. And so now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about one of those suggestions. So amazingly, in the 18th and 19th centuries, there were actually two private libraries in the Craven area which were significant enough to own a Shakespeare First Folio. One was the large library at Eshton Hall, which was assembled by Frances Mary Richardson Currer. She inherited a huge number of books from her great-grandfather, who was also a bibliophile, and she substantially added to it. She was actually the envy of many of the foremost scholars and bibliophiles throughout Europe, and the library was much visited and talked about at the time. Although she didn't really like the publicity, she actually wrote to people and told them not to include her library in their catalogues and things, because she didn't really want any more publicity than she already had. There is a second library which is not in the Craven area, but it is quite nearby, and that was the one that was assembled by Robert Heaton at Pondon Hall near Haworth. So anyone with a Bronte connection obviously would have undoubtedly heard of Pondon Hall, as it's where the Brontes are supposed to have possibly borrowed their books from. And tradition has it that they had access to a Shakespeare First Folio. So let's consider these two possible libraries. So I'll consider Eshton Hall first. So the library at Eshton Hall was sadly dispersed in 1861 after Frances Mary's death. But luckily for us, a full catalogue of the library was made in 1833. And I managed to track down a reprint of this. And although there is a folio edition of Shakespeare mentioned, it is listed as the third impression of the folio. Furthermore, it's described as containing 7 new plays, which it would be the case for the third folio, and that it was part of the imprint, most of which was lost in the Great Fire of London. So again, that's conversant with it being a third folio. So it does sound as if this one has been correctly identified. There are also later editions of Shakespeare listed, including other quite rare ones. I think we can be fairly sure that there was no first folio in the library in 1833. But what we can't rule out is her having purchased one subsequently. Obviously, she carried on collecting between 1833 and 1861, so that's quite a lot of time. And she was very interested in Shakespeare-related material. The library catalogue shows us that. But without further evidence of what was actually sold in 1861, the trail goes cold at this point. So really, for that track, we really need to do a bit more research and look into that a bit further. So the mystery continues there. So in my next film, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the library at Pondon Hall and where the trail goes there.